There's a storm across the valley. The clouds are rolling in. The afternoon is heavy on your shoulders. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, a mile or more away. The whining of his wheels just makes it colder.
Welcome to Community Forum. I'm Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host. Today is May 15th, 2023, and today we have an exceptional program with an exceptional artistic and creative woman. Many of you know Elizabeth
Alach.
Mm-hmm. Maybe many of you know Elizabeth Alach, but not as Elizabeth Alach, but as Zaza. And Zaza has a yarn shop, classes, and who knows what. And today we're going to find out all about the who knows what, and also see some of the products that she has helped people to learn to knit, crochet, et cetera. Welcome, Zaza.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, wonderful. And you know, when I visited your shop, there were 5 or 6 women sitting in a circle, knitting, enjoying each other's company. So when they come to your shop, it's not just about learning the skills that you teach, but also the social engagement that people have, which is so important to longevity and health. So tell me about how all of this got started, and give me a little bit of your background, where you grew up, and was this an early passion of yours?
Yes, my beginnings of my knitting career happened as a teenager, where one day I descended upon my mom, who was sitting in the living room knitting, and I told her, I want to know how to knit right now. And she set me out to knit a pair of mittens, which involved a cable and an increase and doing a knit one, purl one, and making a thumb and a decrease. And when I finished, it was what we called the bulletproof mitten, because it was so tight I couldn't even put my hands into it. And that was the beginning of my career. I found over the years that knitting was what took care of me. It was my passion. It is my meditation, and it brings me a lot of joy. My career is, I am a nurse. And what I found was knitting was my healing practice. And now it is, probably 15 years ago, I had some kind of a revelation that I wanted to share with people and to give away the joy that I know from knitting. And I decided to open the yarn shop.
Wow, wonderful. And how has that impacted your life? You know, it must in so many ways, but tell us a few ways in which you feel it has impacted your life.
Well, let's see. A leap of faith, I guess. That's one bit about making a choice, setting an intention, and allowing myself to recreate myself, not knowing how it was going to work out. So for those of you who have the dream of becoming an entrepreneur, I had the experience where it was a little bit like skydiving, and I am quite frightened of heights. And I had this analogy that I had a backpack with a little flap of fabric and a ball of string, and I was expected to jump out of the airplane, trusting it was all going to work out just fine. And as soon as I got to the ground, there it was. That ride was waiting for me again to, okay, time to go up again and time to take the next leap. And little by little, over the 10 years, we've created a beautiful little community. I like to think of it like I'm marketing what the Danish word is hygge. Hygge means cozy. So when you walk into the shop, there's a mantle, which is not a fireplace, but we sit around the illusion of a fireplace, and we get cozy together. And our intention is to create community and give people an opportunity to participate together with people of like mind, with the creatives, and especially with fiber arts. We spend a lot of time alone chipping away at the projects that we're dreaming of completing. And by virtue of the groups that we have, people have a chance to come together and inspire each other and learn from each other and support and encourage each other.
And I'm sure the support and the encouragement are not just for the fiber arts, but also for life, living, and so forth. So I'm sure it is, in some ways, like the consciousness raising groups of the 1960s, 70s, many of which I started way back then. And do you find that almost all the people who attend your sessions are female, or do you ever have any male participants?
Yes, there certainly are men who are knitting. We have kind of an ebb and flow of men who are participating in our groups, but predominantly we have women. With the youth groups, there can be a little bit more diversity as far as boys who are interested in exploring the fiber arts. And the men are certainly my customers. I'll have times when a woman comes in with a 17-year-old, and I have to be mindful not to attend to only the mother who is there, and to be open to, indeed, the customer who is shopping is actually the 17-year-old boy who's looking to make a project for his mother. So, yeah.
So I bet maybe yesterday was Mother's Day, so perhaps there were some of those products given as gifts to mothers yesterday.
That's very true.
Yeah.
People who know their mom love the arts do swing by for a gift.
Now, when you were a nurse, you on your breaks, did you knit as well as have coffee or whatever?
Yes, in particular working the night shift on the job that I had, which it was very busy in the 2 or 3 hours in the beginning of the shift and very busy in the 2 or 3 hours at the end of the shift. And in the middle, there was time to be able to practice knitting. And one of my greatest teachers was my colleague who taught me how to knit fishermen's sweaters in the early 80s.
Mm. Interesting you should mention fishermen's sweaters, because my sister was a wonderful knitter, my late sister, and she did lots of the, I'm assuming the Irish knit sweater is what you're referring to, and some of them have popcorn, you know what that is, of course,
Yeah.
on them, and I have them. Recently I sent one to my 6'3" kid brother, because it was obviously for a guy with long arms, which he has. And so I treasure those. She also was a marvelous crocheter. She did Afghans, beautiful colors, and on the Afghans were roses with green leaves underneath, positioned here and there. And at her funeral, at her wake, there were 13 people who came to me and said that they had one of these beautiful Afghans from my sister, so that she would always be remembered by these close friends. And by the way, she was also a nurse. So I imagine, and she worked the night shift. And besides bringing back a gentleman in the intensive care unit from, his heart had stopped, and she was one of these old-fashioned nurses that you just take up big and pound the chest. She broke a few ribs, but she gained a beautiful full-length black mink coat because he was a furrier.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. But I'm sure that she did lots of crocheting and knitting also during the middle of that night shift when they were sleeping. So tell me, did you have difficulties in the beginning attracting people to this whole new idea for Main Street Northeastern?
Yes, that's a part of the process. I'd say I had tremendous faith that people were going to find me. There were many days where I sat in the shop by myself, building the vision and saying to myself, it's just enjoy the quiet right now. It's not going to stay like this. And certainly with that, people found out about us, and now we have, I think we're at 13 different groups. We have about 50 students who participate in our small group program throughout the week. And grace to our student population, we have been generously supported and helped our vision to flourish over the years, and especially during the pandemic, that our student community has been incredible.
Wow, and what are the ages of these students?
Well, my youngest student was 3 years old, and my oldest student had to stop at 100. So it's throughout the lifespan, let's just put it that way.
I would say so. Can does a 3-year-old have the dexterity, the ability physically to, and coordination to knit?
I would say not usually, but this little person was an incredibly unusual person with a fabulous grandma, Linda Landerholm and Lindley Menard, and Lindley sat on her grandmother's lap, and she learned how to do it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's 5-year-olds are on the early bird side. 6 and 7-year-olds can grasp it very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, if my 6 about to be 7-year-old granddaughter ever comes up to visit me from New Jersey, I'll know where to take her.
Yeah, we would love that. Yeah, we have a lot of times we'll have, a mother-daughter, father-daughter, father-son, combinations who come in, and interestingly enough, sometimes the young fathers have the experience of knowing how to knit and support their child in their journey because of their relationship with an older knitter, either their own mother or a grandmother who guided them when they were young.
When I was just thinking, when did I learn to knit? I learned to knit and embroider from my paternal grandmother's sister, Aunt Annie. And she was Aunt Annie Johnson, and she lived on North Layden Street in Brockton. And so did her sister, my grandmother, Selma, and my grandfather, Fred Almquist. And in the backyard, just in front of the big barn, was one of those old-fashioned wooden swings. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
They're very large and beautiful, and there are 2 swings, each one facing each other. So as it goes, like this. And my sister Karen and I just loved to sit there and swing, especially in the spring. So that's where she would give us these hoops and an embroidery yarn and a needle, and she would teach us how to, all the different embroidery steps. But she also would give us knitting needles, and we had to learn how to do that, and we did, and we loved it. And of course, the very first thing I made was a scarf, because that's the easiest thing. And I learned knit purl, knit purl, knit purl, knit purl. And Corin and I would sit on this and swing and do our knitting or our embroidery. But she took it much more seriously than I did, and she went on to crochet also. And she did all the difficult things like the fisherman nets, the Irish sweaters with the popcorn and all that fancy stuff. But I remember doing a cable sweater for my former husband as a newlywed. In those cables, there were like 4 cables in the front, and they came all the way down. So I think that was pretty interesting. And I don't know if it was difficult, but I thought it was.
Well, it's definitely is a journey, and you can make it as complicated or as uncomplicated as you want. And one of the things we'll tell our beginning knitters is actually the art of knitting is 2 stitches, a knit and a purl. And everything else is just a manipulation of those 2 stitches. And many, many of us just like to knit something, you know, where the rhythm is a form of meditation or prayer, and each little stitch we make is filled with love. So as you receive a gift from a hand knitter, you can know that there is lots of love in it, even if it's quite ill-fitted. Because, you know, in the beginning, or sometimes when we make a mistake, it doesn't exactly turn out like we want.
Well, you brought, no, and I remember my great Aunt Annie, she was very religious, and she was always knitting for the missions and for all the, especially the children. And I remember when she died, I got a off-white sleeveless knit vest sweater, and it had, right in the front, there was a drop stitch. And that really reminded me so much of her, because she was legally blind most of her life, or most of her adult life. So that drop stitch was pretty meaningful. And she would just knit and knit, and more hats and mittens and scarves for, I guess, the colder climates. Anyway, so tell me, you brought some items today. You want to talk about some, maybe start with what we have right here?
Sure. Well, not only do we knit, but we crochet. So crochet is using the fibers with the tool that is a hook, and knitting is using the same fibers. So this is a different object, same yarn. This one is knit, this is crochet. And in either one of knitting and crocheting, there's quite an alchemy in that the magic of just forming with our tool, the hook or the needles, we can create fabric or create beautiful little sculptures or toys or whatever your imagination is. It's possible through the journey of knitting or crocheting to make magic happen, whether you like functional pieces or functional art, or if you want, as you may see behind me, they're little objects, which is my passion of making sweet little toys. I just made a megalodon tooth for my grandson's kindergarten years, where he continues, obviously, or is in the beginning of losing all those teeth. So he has a megalodon tooth fairy pillow, because I just needed to make that.
Oh, did he make it?
He knows how to knit, but no, I did make this for him. My little megalodon with a pocket in it that he can secure it for when the fairy comes.
Oh, how neat. Wonderful. And I see you have traditional hats behind you.
Yeah.
As well as little animals, and there's starfish and an octopus, and a great hat with, what's that fuzzy thing on the top? Is that's
Just
something?
a furry pom-pom.
And do you make that?
No, that was sold at the store. We carry
Yeah.
furry pom-poms to accessorize your completed hats.
So tell me, what do you enjoy the most about your business?
I love being with the people who come into Auntie's. I love to witness the joy that it is when people walk into the store. I had one customer who came with her daughter, and she was in her 90s. And she stood in the door of the shop and said, "This is the store I came to with my mom when I was little." You know, and there's this incredible magic as you walk in, if you know you're a fiber artist, but even if you're not, it's very inspiring to come into the store. There's so many bright colors and so many magical things that we have created to inspire our customers. One thing that we say is, as a customer comes in, they may have the experience as if they're Julie Andrews up on the hills. The yarn, no, the store is alive. With lots of yarn, you know, whatever, I'm not really singing, but there you have it. Just that feeling of joy to be immersed into what is our passion.
Now
And that's magical for me.
Now, I believe you also teach embroidery.
No, we don't.
Oh, you don't?
Nope, we teach knitting and crochet predominantly. We have programs of weaving, of needle felting, which is another fiber art where you take roving and using a little barbed needle, meld the fibers together to create sculptures or two-dimensional art. So we do have some programming with that, but as of right now, it's predominantly knitting and crochet classes, and the materials are wonderful for anyone who's a fiber artist. They're really, really beautiful fibers that we sell.
Now, how do you compare your nursing career with this new career? Do you find there are similarities with both?
Without a doubt. They both afford a healing practice for the person who's participating in it. And someone who is using the arts in a healing way reaps many, many benefits. So it lowers your blood pressure because you get into this meditative state. Any of the benefits that you would have from a meditation or yoga practice becomes available to the person who's either knitting or crocheting. It's been documented it helps with dementia. I've had the personal experience of witnessing several of my students who've had brain injury or have progressive degenerative neurological conditions who had unexplained not only plateau of the degeneration, but improvement, which was mind-blowing for me to witness, for the individual to experience, and actually for the medical team in one case to witness, like, this is unprecedented, what's happening, and the student attributed it to her participation in the classes. So on many, many levels, there are benefits, to say nothing of being together in community, having new friends, a sense of belonging, building your confidence. There's just so many wonderful things about it.
So that gives you a great deal of joy and satisfaction and appreciation for something that you started right from the beginning, and it's very humbling for me to sit here and listen to a business that has become such a success and such a part of the Easton community. So I thank you so much, Zaza, for being with us today and sharing your experience. And for those of you out there who have grandparents or parents who are experiencing dementia, you might want to think about coming to Zaza's yarn shop, Auntie Zaza's on Main Street, Northeastern, and see if their dementia could be improved. No guarantees, but there's always that possibility. And think of the joy of meeting new people and socializing, and especially meeting Auntie Zaza. So thank you. Thank you again for being my guest. This is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen wishing you all well. Until next time, be well.